and their mothers are not giving milk. The cows are simply standing there crying, tears in their eyes. And then he said, not just that. I'm noticing that even the deities on the altar, they seem to be crying in the temple. So many bad or inauspicious omens. So he wondered if Narad Muni's prediction about Krishna's leaving this planet had come true, and maybe Krishna had actually left the planet. So he was getting all worried. As he was talking to Bhima, Arjun walked into the assembly room, but he looked teary eyed and head bowed down, just looking very, very upset. So Yudhishthira Maharaj observed that and started asking questions of Arjun. So these questions are listed in this chapter between text 24 and 38. All of them asking about the welfare of his relatives in the Yadu dynasty. And today's verse 31 is a part of those questions. And in this particular verse, Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking Arjun about Krishna's children whose names are mentioned. Shishirna, Chandrashna, and Rishabha, and Samba, etc., etc. So sometimes people say, well, why are we spending our time reading about the children of Krishna? Well, a similar question is asked also for chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita, because many, many names are mentioned there. And Srila Prabhupada said that any names, any places, any leelas connected with Krishna are purifying and therefore worthy of our time and attention. Hence, we spend time discussing these verses just like any other verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. There's no hierarchy in the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. They're all equally important and equally purifying. So this whole thing about, let me go to Canto 10, that's bogus, as Srila Prabhupada said many, many times. So in the purport of this particular verse, Srila Prabhupada says 10 sons of each of the wives of Krishna. But actually, he didn't mention the daughter. So Krishna had, 10 sons and one daughter with every wife. Every one after 16,108 wives. So if I modify the calculation a little bit from what Prabhupada has shown in the purport and add the daughters, the number goes up to 177,188. So, confession time, I'm an engineer, therefore a nerd. I like numbers. So if I'm throwing too many numbers at you, please forgive me. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. But staying with just the sons, Prabhupada mentions here. So 161,080 sons. And then each of them had 10 sons of Krishna. You do the multiplication again. Now you get to 1,610,800 people. Now let's make it really complicated. So now each of those sons and grandsons had a wife. And let's assume that each of the grandsons also had one child. So now you're looking at counting everybody. And I did this calculation using a calculator, so I know this number is right. 3,414,897. So let's just say almost 3.5 million people in the immediate family of Krishna. So now some people say, how can so many people live in a small place, Dwarka? So Srila Prabhupada reminds them that in Vrindavan, during Ras Leela, 3 billion gopis showed up. Almost all of them were married. So assuming he had one husband and one kid, that's 9 billion people, 3 billion wives, 3 billion husbands, 3 billion children. There's 9 billion people just from the family of those who showed up at the Ras Leela. And there's so many others in Vrindavan, or Brij, I should say. On top of that, so many cows, millions of cows. They all lived in a small place called Vrindavan. But it should not be surprising that they were all accommodated into Dwarka and Vrindavan, because both Dwarka and Vrindavan are transcendental abodes of Krishna. They are material places. So therefore, there's no physical limitation. We also know from Brahma Samhita 5.2, Sahasrapatra Kavalam, just the design of the Goloka is like a lotus flower. And it goes on to describe how the petals are the residents, and the gopis are living at the tip, and the veins of the petals are the pathways, etc., etc. Goes on quite a bit of detail in Brahma Samhita. But anyway, the point I want to make is that, so Vrindavan in the material world, which is a replica of the Vrindavan in the spiritual world, is like a lotus flower also. And depending upon whether a demon is trying to come to meet Krishna, the desire to kill Krishna, it opens up. So the distance between the demon and Krishna becomes longer. On the other hand, when Krishna wants to meet Radharani, this so-called lotus flower, Vrindavan, it closes down. Therefore, the distance between Radharani and Krishna becomes smaller, and Krishna is able to reach Radharani much faster than he would otherwise. So my point is, these are transcendental places. Therefore, it should not be surprising that so many people can be accommodated in a so-called small place. Then the next question comes, well, okay, fine, but how can one person, Krishna, maintain so many wives, children, and grandchildren? I just said almost 3.5 million. And the simple answer is that Krishna can, because he's infinite, he's omnipotent, and has a transcendental body. But we can't, because we are infinitesimal, and we have a material body, and we are very weak in strength. Krishna in the Bhagwatam first canto, first chapter, first verse, is defined as Abhigya Swarat. Abhigya means knows everything. Swarat means completely independent. But we are Agya as opposed to Abhigya. Agya means ignorant. And we are not Swarat, we're totally dependent upon him. He's a sole controller, proprietor, enjoyer, etc., etc., as we know from Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, we don't have that ability to maintain that kind of family. And Upanishad also says, Nityo Nityana, Chetanas Chetanana. So we are eternal, yes, but Krishna is eternal among the eternals and the origin of the eternals. And we know only our consciousness and our body, but Krishna knows everybody's consciousness and everybody's body, as explained in chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna also explains in chapter 7, text 46, Vedam Samhitani Bhavishyani Bhutani. Sorry, Vedam Samhitani, Krishna. Vartamanani Arjuna, Bhavishyani Bhutani, Amtaveda Krishna. He says in 7:26 that I know the past, I know the present, and I know the future. But the fools and the faithless people cannot understand this particular point. And Krishna acknowledges that. He says in chapter 9, text 11, what he says, Avajananti mamudha manusham tanmashita param bhavam ajananto mambhut maheshwara. He says that these fools don't understand that I am Maheshwara. I'm the controller of everything. I'm above everything. And then he mentions in chapter 7, text 15, Namam Duskritino Mudha, Prapadante Naradama, Maya Pratgyana, Ashram Bhavam Ashita. He says that those people who have no faith, those people whose intelligence has been stolen by Maya, those people who are Gnostic, which means atheist, which is basically faithless, they cannot understand him, nor do they worship him. And therefore, they question my abilities, they question my pastimes, they question my intentions. One thing they don't understand also is that actually, if you look at Depth of Devotion, it talks about the 64 qualities of Krishna. In that, he mentions that Lord Narayan has 60 of those 64 qualities, which means Krishna, of course, has those. And one of those 60 qualities Lord Narayan has, and therefore Krishna has, is that he has inconceivable potencies. Inconceivable simply means that we cannot even conceive of those things. Therefore, how can we understand his pastimes? How can we understand his potencies with our limited material mind and limited material intelligence? So, how do we understand? How do we understand Krishna's pastimes? How do we understand Krishna's potencies? How do we understand Krishna? And explain in the scriptures that we need to purify our intelligence, need to purify our faith, to understand the transcendental pastimes, transcendental potencies, etc. of Krishna, where everything about Krishna is beyond material. This is called transcendental. Those of us who have some degree of devotion, we know and we relish Krishna's pastimes, so many pastimes. But in particular, I'm thinking about in the context of this verse is the pastime of Govardhan Leela. What does Krishna do in Govardhan Leela? At the age of 7, he lifts this whole hill, which was much, 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 much larger than it is today. It's large enough today. But at the age of 7, he lifts this whole hill. With the pinky finger of his left hand. Not for 7 minutes, not for 7 hours, not for anything like that, but 7 days and 7 nights. Faithless people cannot understand that. How they don't understand how a 6-day-old baby Krishna can kill a powerful demon, Putna, who had a 12-mile-long body. So because they don't understand it, they start calling the scriptures and all these pastimes a mythology. Mythology means false, a myth, or fiction. But they don't understand the scriptures are history, not myth, not fiction. These things happened. The problem is with them, not with Krishna or not with Krishna's pastime, nor with the scriptures that describe his pastime, his family, his activities, etc., etc. Some other examples. We know the story of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was a very famous Mayavadi Vedantist at the time of Lord Chaitanya. Very intelligent, very learned, but his intelligence was not purified. It was contaminated by what you call Mayavadi philosophy, or Mayavadi understanding of the scriptures. Oh, yeah, I should mention that I was there in December last year, like a couple of months ago. And there I was fortunate enough to be shown the manuscript from which Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was reading to Lord Chaitanya. They have preserved that. So they were very kind to show me that particular manuscript that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was reading from in his discussion with Lord Chaitanya. Anyway, so Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya could not understand how someone can listen to him for 7 days without interrupting or asking a single question. And then you could believe how someone like that can give 64 interpretations of the very famous Atmaram verse. For those of you who may have forgotten which verse I'm referring to, So Srimad Bhagwatam, first canto, chapter 7, text 10, it goes something like this. Atma Ramascha Muniyo Tirganthapi Urukrame Kurvanti Ahatakim Bhaktir Ittambhuta Guno Hari. So basically that was the verse, and Lord Chaitanya gave 64 different meanings of the word Atma. So well, then the question becomes, how are we supposed to purify our intelligence, our consciousness, our mind? Well, those methods for purification are described in various scriptures actually. That is documented in many places. You can do it by honoring prasadam, ahar shuddho chitta shuddho. And actually that particular point is confirmed by the story of the dog who was liberated after honoring prasadam of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya was eating and throwing pieces to him. He honored that, and then he was liberated just from eating that prasadam. And there are many other stories about prasadam purifying the consciousness and the mind and intelligence of people. We can also purify by hearing and chanting the holy name of the Lord. You all know the famous Shikshashtakam verse, Yetodapan Mahajana. The purification starts happening the moment we start hearing and chanting the name of the Lord. And we know the holy name of the Lord is from the cup devotion. We know the holy name of the Lord includes the Lord, all his associates, his form, his qualities, his dham, and his pastimes. So in that sense, listening to the names of the children of the Lord is the same as listening to the names of Krishna. Let me repeat that. Listening to the names of the children of the Lord is the same as listening to the names of Krishna. That's the Bhedabhed, Achintya Bhedabhed philosophy as espoused by Lord Chaitanya. Similarly, touching or reading the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagwatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, they're all purifying. And this is why in book distribution, we are encouraged to put the book in the hands of a potential purchaser or potential liberated person. So even in the worst case scenario, when the person shows no interest, just by touching the book, by holding the book in their hands, is somewhat purified, which will result in his increased faith in Krishna sometime in future. So one day they will become a devotee simply because they held Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavatam, or Bhagavad Gita in their hand. They looked at some pictures, faith increases. There may be some time lag, but it will happen. In the devotion also, we read Ado Shuddha Tato Sadhasang Adh Bhajana Kriya Sad Arth Nivritti Tato Nishtha, and so on and so forth, all the way to Prema. So Shraddha means faith. So it all starts with faith. And we're talking about increasing the faith. So it all starts with faith. And faith is defined as accepting something without tangible proof. You can't prove it, but you believe it. Every fiber of your body, every fiber of your intelligence and mind and brain, whatever, it believes it, even though you can't prove it. And this verse that I'm quoting from the Cup Devotion says faith increases to nishtha, which is very strong faith, to the process of devotee association and bhajana kriya. Bhajan kriya basically means the 9 processes of devotional service, starting with hearing and chant. And as the faith goes through different stages all the way to nishtha, the purity of our intelligence, mind, and consciousness grow with that. And once that has happened, once our mind, intelligence, and consciousness have been purified, with absolutely no difficulty believing even the so-called most far-fetched pastimes of the Lord. And I'll give an example. I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have already heard that. So forgive me for repeating something you may have heard many times. but I think it's in the context. And listening to these pastimes is always purifying anyway, even if you've heard it a million times. And the story is about Narad Muni wandering around as he does and meeting two people in a forest. One was a Brahmin, one was a cobbler. They both recognized Narad Muni. They both welcomed him, offered their obeisances, and asked him, "So Narad Muni, I know you keep wandering all the time. So please tell me, where are you going next?" Narad Muni said, "I'm going to see Lord Vishnu." They're both very excited. So they both said, "Oh, please, when you see him, please ask him, when would I be liberated?" They both had the same question. When do we become liberated? I said, "Okay, sure, no problem." And he left. Sometime later, he passed by the same place again, met the same two people. So again, they were very excited to see him. They offered their obeisances, welcomed him back and said, "Narad Muni, so did you remember to go to Lord Vishnu and did you remember to ask a question?" And Narad Muni said, "Yes, I did visit Lord. Yes, I did ask the question." So now they're really curious and they said, please, tell us what he said." And Narad Muni said to the Brahmin that there'll be many, many lifetimes before you are liberated. The Brahmin was very disappointed because he had been doing all the tantras and the mudras and the services, all those kind of things, all his life. Cobbler, he looked at Narad Muni, hoping to get an answer for him. And Narad Muni said, the Lord said, "This is your last life. At the end of it, you'll become liberated." Now, when the Brahmin heard that, he got very angry. He said, I knew you wouldn't go to Lord Vishnu. You're just making up all these stories. Narad Muni said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "Well, if you had actually gone to Lord Vishnu, then he would not have given this answer. So prove to me that you actually visited Lord Vishnu. So tell me, what was he doing when you saw him?" Narad Muni said, "Well, actually, he was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle." The Lord was threading an elephant through the eye of a needle, and it went through. At that point, both the Brahmin and the cobbler started laughing. He said, cobbler was also dancing. The Brahmin said, "Look, here's the proof. You did not visit. How is it possible that somebody can take an elephant through the eye of a needle? You did not visit the Lord." And cobbler was dancing. He says, "My Lord can do anything. He can even put an elephant through the eye of a needle." And that's the difference in faith. And that difference in faith means the result is entirely different. Brahmin has to stay for a longer time. Cobbler is going home at the end of his birth, simply because so much faith. So therefore, a purified faith, a strong faith in Krishna and his potencies and his pastimes, etc., is very, very important. And Krishna is very interesting. He doesn't do anything without a reason. So, for example, it's a by the way, it came to me that what was I going to say? Krishna does two types of leelas. Well, no, but two types that I would talk about. One is something that shows him as an ordinary human being. So afraid of the lightning and the thunder of the cloud and running to his mother. Or being defeated in the wrestling game by his friends. That's human-like leela. Those kind of leelas are performed to attract human beings because you can relate to those things. And they're sweet. Especially if a devotee, you find it even more sweet. But superhuman leelas like killing Putana at the age of 6 days, lifting Godangi for 7 days at the age of 7, so on and so forth, they're performed to attract non-devotees. So Krishna is very interested in attracting the devotees, the kind of in-betweens, and the non-devotees. So he performs those leelas. But that has nothing to do with the lack of his potencies or his abilities. So they're all believable pastimes. So therefore, I think we can conclude that the purity of mind, intelligence, consciousness, and faith, strong faith, are very important. And we the aspiring devotees, let's say that, and some of your devotees aspiring, um, we have a responsibility to increase not only in us this faith and purity, but also in the people in this world. This is why Lord Chaitanya asked the Kuma Brahman, he's on Chaitanya Chaitamrit, Kuma Brahman wanted to accompany, excuse me, Lord Chaitanya after he left, when he was leaving his home after 4 months of Chaturmas at his house. He said, I want to come with you, and I don't want to have anything with the family. Lord Chaitanya said, no, you stay here and you preach. A very famous verse of Chaitanya Chaitamrit, Lord Chaitanya speaks, Jare dekho tare kaho, Krishna upadesh, Amara agya guru hoya, taro desh. So whomever you see, wherever you see, you tell them about Krishna. And I'm ordering you to become a guru like that, like Shiksha Guru, and deliver the whole country, whole world. So therefore, we should all accept that instruction of Lord Chaitanya and try to become what we call Vartama Guru or Vartama Pradarshak Guru, which means basically connect somebody with Krishna. Connect somebody who's not connected to Krishna with Krishna. Take the first one to show Krishna to somebody. And of course, the next stage is to help people get closer to Krishna. That's our responsibility. And you may have heard that actually these days ISKCON is really encouraging senior devotees to become Diksha Gurus, not just Shiksha Gurus, Diksha Gurus, because we need to help so many people in the world. The number of people keeps on increasing, the number of non-devotees keeps on increasing along with that. So we have a responsibility to Lord Chaitanya. We have a responsibility to our gurus. We have a responsibility to Srila Prabhupada to help the world become more Krishna conscious. Just changing the topic a little bit, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada also mentions that the Lord is the father of countless living beings. Actually, in 15, what was it? Chapter 15, text 15, Bhagavad Gita, he says, very famous verse, excuse me, Mameva Ansho Jivaloke, Jiv Bhuta Sanatana. He said, all the living entities are my part and parcel. So we are all his children, and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc., etc., etc. But only a few of us are called to be associates, I should say, of the Lord, when it comes down to this material world to perform his transcendental pastimes. A very famous story we know, for example, when Lord Vishnu promised Lord Brahma to appear as Lord Ram. He also told Brahma to order some of the demigods to appear as monkeys in his pastimes. So we know Sugriva, the son god, Hanuman, the son of wind god, so forth. So many of them appeared to help Lord Ram in his pastimes. And at the same time, some other devotees appeared as his parents, Darsharatha and Kaushalya, and other devotees who were also helping Lord Ram in his pastime. They were all invited to be with him. In Lord Krishna's pastimes also, we see the same thing. Some devotees like Nanda Yashoda, Vasudeva Devaki, they all appeared as parents. Some devotees appeared as gopis and the gopas. It's a very intimate pastimes with them. Many demigods chosen to appear as children and grandchildren, talked about in the Yadu dynasty of Krishna when he was in Dwarka. And not all devotees get positive roles like the gopis and the manjaris, etc., like the manjaris. But we know that some devotees get negative roles. The most famous of them with negative roles are Jatila and Kutila, whose sole responsibility was to make sure Radha and Krishna don't meet. But in the process, they were making their pastimes even sweeter. They were making the meeting of Radha and Krishna, all these obstacles, even sweeter and more relatable to Radha and Krishna. So they were actually doing this to increase the pleasure of Radha and Krishna upon the orders of Krishna. They were not doing it on their own. So similarly, we know other examples also. Um, um, what was the name? Jay and Vijay. They showed up as Shishupal and Dantavakra in Krishna Leela, as Ravan and Kumbhakarna in Ram Leela, and as Hiranyakashipu in Nrsimha Leela, and as Naksha in Varaha Leela. So I mean, they all take negative role, but only to increase the pleasure of the Lord. So anyway, the point is that Prabhupada is mentioning that only some of us are invited to associate with the Lord to help him in their pastimes. But we should all strive to purify our chanting to the degree where we're not only able to see the Lord's form and understand that really the name of the Lord is non-different from the Lord. See his form, see his qualities, see his dham, see his pastimes, and then actually participate in those pastimes. That's the kind of purity of our chanting that we need to get to, and we're trying. It's hard, but we're trying to do that. But that's the ultimate goal. That kind of love of Krishna, where we're actually allowed to participate in those pastimes. So I'm going to stop. Just in conclusion, I want to make the points that some of the takeaways from this verse that I got, and I'd like to pass it on to you, is how a devotee like Yudhishthir is constantly thinking about and missing Lord Krishna, and how eager Krishna is to see such a devotee. So this is Maharaj sending Arjun to find out. Krishna is sending a messenger, have Yudhishthir send an invitation to him so he can come visit him. Second one is we should constantly endeavor to purify our mind, intelligence, and consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting. I should work very hard to help others purify their mind, intelligence, and consciousness. And that's what Prabhupada called Sankirtan movement. We should all be participating in that Sankirtan movement, chanting and distributing books. And whomever finding, giving them Krishna, Krishna's name, Krishna's pastimes, tell them about Krishna, attract them to come to the temple, etc. And finally, we should work very hard to be called by the Lord to participate in his pastimes. Or at least, and this is really the least we should be doing, to become qualified to be noticed by the Lord when we go to the temple. A lot of us are very happy to go to the temple and see the Lord and come back. And then we say, oh, it looks so nice, the dress was so nice, the hair looks so nice, the ornaments look so nice. No. We should look at what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj said in this context. He said, let us stop being the seer. We're seeing the Lord. Stop being the seer. Start working towards becoming the seen, to be seen by the Lord. Imagine Krishna turning to Radharani saying, oh, I'm so happy this devotee is here. Imagine being that devotee. Krishna is pointing out to Radharani. That should be our goal. Thank you. Hare Krishna. I'm open to questions, comments, corrections.
Yes.